It's the alien conspiracy.
Oh, sorry, I was just enjoying the music.
I was enjoying it.
I was just
too.
like, I was like,
this is
yeah.
pretty badass.
I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Oh no, wait, yeah, I was supposed to go on the butter. Let's do that again.
I love it.
All right.
That's perfect.
Ready?
Yep. It's time for the Alien Conspiracy Podcast. We are your hosts, Agent ETA.
Agent Ether.
Agent Kruger.
And Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to check out our Facebook group and page, AlienConPod. All right.
Yeah.
This week's episode, the Loch Ness Monster.
Hell yeah, brother.
It's frightening. I don't actually know why they call it the Loch Ness Monster because it's not really that scary. It never really attacked anybody. It never ate any babies or did anything remotely frightening. It just,
It scared people.
There actually is one story, actually one of the earliest recorded supposed sightings of the Loch Ness Monster is actually from the 6th century AD. And it was about a saint that had came from Ireland. And this saint was a missionary from Ireland. And his name was Saint Columba. And supposedly this guy had actually saved an individual from an attack by the Loch Ness Monster. And it's one of the earliest depictions, I guess, from what I understand.
That's the first written, reported written sighting or whatever, but it had been in the local folklore for a while, but we'll get to that in a minute.
I shouldn't have said depiction. Yeah. Right.
Let's backtrack a little bit on that. So just to get started, for me, this is a really fun case. Going all the way back to when I was a kid, I had to do a book report one year. And when I think I was in middle school, and I just kind of grabbed a book randomly off the shelf, and it happened to be an entire book about the Loch Ness Monster. And the book was very, very, very in favor of it being real. It was not balanced at all. And as a kid, an impressionable youth, I read it and I thought, wow, this is the coolest thing ever, man. Like, it made me think that it was real. So this particular case is like kind of a special place for me. Like, as I got older, like, I'm not as convinced of how real it is as I used to be, but for a while there when I was a kid, it was just a really fun thing to believe that there was this bizarre dinosaur looking fish swimming around a lake in Scotland. You know, it's just really fun for me. So that's, for me, I have like this kind of nostalgic connection to the case because of that reason.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I would kind of double that sentiment, you know. I mean, it's a very, very iconic case, you know. Everybody knows, everybody's heard of Nessie. Shit, I've been to a really good burger joint, as a matter of fact, in Southern California that was called Nessie Burger. And if anybody listening has ever been to Nessie Burger, they know what I'm talking about. Oh, it's delicious. But
where is Nessie Burger?
It's out by Temecula.
Okay.
The Temecula area, like a little south of Temecula, from what I understand.
We should
remember correctly.
I have not been, but I am going to go visit somebody in that area pretty soon here. So I'm going to have to check it out.
Worth it.
I was not aware that you could get burgers made from Nessie, but
oh, poor Nessie.
Well, yeah, and they're not cheap. I'll put that out there too. They're not cheap, but hey, worth it. I'm just saying, worth it.
$10,000. What the hell is this made out of? Nessie? Oh, all right then.
They're big patties. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
But yeah, the Loch Ness Monster, man, such an iconic case. And there's been so many sightings and so many theories too of like what it could be, you know, or I mean, in the area, and the whole area is so deep seated with history and culture. And there's a lot of ancient lore, mythology, whatever you want to call it, within that area. I mean, it's a very interesting area for cryptids and such things. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it
definitely.
doesn't surprise me at all that like one of the most iconic mythologies in the world, as far as I'm concerned, is comes from there.
I think Vikings shaped their ships like it.
Yeah, I told Agent Anderson it's probably the most famous cryptid ever, but he was arguing that it was Bigfoot.
And then I said, well,
That's a hard debate, though.
Yeah.
That's a hard debate.
I guess it
wouldn't
depends
wanna
on where
split-
you are.
yeah. Like, for example,
Yeah.
there's up in Canada, there's another podcast I listen to. They're out of Kelowna, BC, and they live really close to a lake, whatever, some Canadian lake. And there's a kind of like a Loch Ness Monster there called Ogopogo. And
yeah.
if you live in that area, you're probably more familiar with Ogopogo than you are with the Loch Ness Monster. I can't remember the name of that lake. It's going to bug me now. It's on the tip of my tongue.
But you've definitely heard of Loch Ness Monster, though. You know
Yeah,
what I
that's
mean?
true. That's true.
But I mean, I guess you could kind of group Loch Ness Monster in with like a couple as like a water beast. You know what I mean? Because there's you want to talk about beasts of the water, whether it be the ocean or lochs, lakes, whatever you want to call it. I mean, there's countless. I mean, especially in the ocean. You kidding me? Man-eating beasts of all sorts of shapes and sizes, and throughout the many millennia that we've been in the water. You know what I mean? So there, I don't know if you want to, group that all in together, but if you want to put that up against Bigfoot, then you might have a case as far as, popularity or, being the most iconic, I
Well,
guess.
especially
But-
if you're in Scotland.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
That's true. 100%. See, where I live in the Pacific Northwest, where Bigfoot is probably definitely bigger than Loch Ness Monster. But yeah, if you're in Scotland, probably
Yeah.
Loch Ness Monster. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that would
They're
make sense.
believers too.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of them that, if you look around a little bit for this case, it's not one of these things where there's people who are just kind of like, yeah, it's a fun story. No, there's a lot of people who genuinely believe in this as like a real
Yeah.
thing. And there's a reason for that too, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think that's kind of one of the strongest points of this case is just how many people claim to have seen something there. You know what I mean? Something
Yeah.
that would line up to be potentially the Loch Ness Monster or something.
Right. Well, just like I think the only other cryptid we've really done is Bigfoot. And just like that case, there's so many thousands of witnesses, it's hard to just dismiss it entirely. No matter how skeptical you want to be, there's so many people who said they've seen something that it's hard to say that they've seen nothing. Whether or not they're seeing, an interdimensional alien beast that wants to hang out in the lake or whatever thing you want to say it is, it's hard to say that they didn't see anything at all and that this many people are completely making it up.
One point I kind of want to make too before we really get started too is this is like going back to what we're talking about, comparing this to Bigfoot as far as popularity. Bigfoot has been, a subject that has been, extensively researched, right? But the Loch Ness Monster has had like extensive research in its own right, for sure. And the research that has been done, there's been a lot of resources and people that are legitimate like professors and researchers that did comprehensive studies relating to Loch Ness. And there was a lot, like I said, there was a lot of effort and resources put into it. And some of these studies are they're as serious as you can get as far as what they're trying to find out. So this is a very special case, even though like I said, everybody's heard about it and you might hear Loch Ness and you're not going to take it seriously, but there's plenty of people out there that have taken it seriously throughout the decades, and put together real deal like research teams to try to find out something, you know what I mean? So that's one of the things that kind of impresses me about like this case is the research involved, the effort that people have actually put into trying to find out whether this is real or not,
Right. Yeah. All right, let's get into it. So first, let's talk a little bit about the Loch Ness itself. So the Loch Ness is a lake in Scotland. And if you're unaware, loch means lake. It's L-O-C-H, not L-O-C-K. But I think it's pronounced loch. But yeah, that means lake in Scottish. So the Loch Ness, it's a freshwater lake. And it connects to the ocean through a river on its northern side. And I think from what I read, the river it's not like a straight shot. It kind of has other bodies that it sort of goes through a little bit before it gets to the ocean. But there is a direct connection to the ocean, which I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit here. But one thing that's very important for this case is just the sheer size of the Loch Ness. It's very big and very deep. It's about 22 or 23 miles long and up to 1.5 miles wide at its widest point. It has approximately 22 square miles of surface area, and it's the second largest surface area loch in Scotland, with the surface area, if you want to put it into acres, would be about 14,000 acres. It has
That's a big lake.
Yeah, it is a big boy we're talking about here. It has 263,000 million cubic feet of water, which I can't even comprehend but a crap ton of water. And by volume, it's the largest in the British Isles. Even though the surface area isn't the largest, because of its depth, it has the largest volume. And it's about 755, maybe as much as 785 feet deep at its deepest point. And it has more water in it than all of the lakes in England and Wales combined. That's a lot of water, guys.
That's kind of crazy, man.
Yeah.
I did not know that before you said that right now. And that's a substantial statement.
It's a lot of water. Tons and tons of water. Just the point, the reason we'll get to it later, but the reason I'm doing all these kind of statistics is just to demonstrate just the sheer size of this thing, because a lot of people, myself included, you might think, well, where's a big thing like this going to hide in a little tiny Scottish lake? Scotland, that's like Rhode Island, man. That's a tiny little place. But when you look at this, the sheer size of this place, and by the way, Scotland, that was not a knock on you. I'm not sure exactly how big Scotland is, so no offense intended, by the way. And no offense intended to Rhode Island either. It's just when you think of Scotland, you don't think of like Texas or Russia or someplace that's real big, is all I'm saying. But anyways,
Oi, don't you be knocking our lock. Yeah, that was bad. That was terrible. Don't even put that in.
The lake is vast. It's really, really big, as it's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. And for anybody unfamiliar with the Loch Ness Monster, or as it's more familiarly known as Nessie, which I don't know why it's called a monster, but Nessie, I think, is a little more appropriate for most descriptions. Most witnesses describe it as being like some kind of aquatic animal with a long neck and a small head, and it usually has one or more humps seen coming out of the water. And if you want to look up a description, it's generally described as being similar as a plesiosaur. Plesiosaur? I don't know how you say it, but like the dinosaur, it kind of looks like a brontosaurus, but instead of legs, it's got flippers, like that one. I'm sure people have seen pictures of it.
I'm very familiar with plesiosaurs just because I've spent so much time on Ark. Survival Evolved,
Hell yeah.
I done tame myself one of them. Yes, sir.
Put a saddle on that sumbitch, ride him around. It's better than a boat.
Those saddles take too many supplies.
Just
too
ridiculous.
many resources.
You could build an entire city out of the supplies required for a plesiosaur saddle.
But I digress, though.
Yeah, me too. But anyways, as Agent ETA said earlier, the earliest known sighting was sometime in the 5th century, but it was written down by an abbot about 100 years later. And in that particular encounter, an Irish monk named Saint Columba, I guess he was later saintitized, he was traipsing through the land of the Picts with his entourage when they came across locals burying a man by the Ness River. The man had been swimming in the river and was attacked by a water beast. The beast chewed him up, spit him out, and then chewed him up a little bit more and dragged him underwater, where he drowned. Columba, being the saintly saint that he is, sent one of his NPCs to swim across the river. The beast, of course, attempted to eat the NPC, but Saint Columba was having none of it. He cast a magic spell on the beast, using his cross and some other holy relics, and the monster stopped in its spot in place as if it had been pulled back by ropes, and then it ran away. This is I'm kind of paraphrasing that account there, but this is the earliest written account of something that could maybe be the Loch Ness Monster. But the lore in the area actually goes back much, much further, And I found references to like paintings on rock of something that looked an awful lot like modern descriptions of the Loch Ness Monster, which I find highly, highly interesting. I think Agent ETA knows a little bit about the lore of the area.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's, like I had said before, lore in this area goes back, as far as you can trace back their civilization, really, But there's a couple different, popular ones that I found kind of interesting. So there's a giant flesh-eating waterfowl. There's also, all right. So one of the ones I actually kind of really liked was this shape-shifting water horse, and I believe, damn here, let me. Oh yeah, it's the kelpie. So the kelpie is a shape-shifting aquatic like horse, right? It's a legend in Scotland, and it can be depicted as a horse or sometimes even like in human form, but it's shape-shifting. So it usually appears at the water's edge and lures people to ride it because it's a white, like glowing, like a glorious depiction of a horse. You know what I mean? So anybody, a traveler that was, coming by here, there, whatever area, and they would see this horse and it looks so majestic, and they would, jump on it to ride it, right? Because why wouldn't you, right? And so it would immediately jump into the water and then drown them. So that was part of the the water, one of the water related lore figures, in the area. There's also this nine-eyed eel, which I actually kind of think may be more closely related because of one of the actual research, or one of the studies that actually have been conducted within that loch, and it had to do with the environmental DNA present within the water in the loch. And was anybody else? I don't want to step on anybody's toes. Was anybody else planning on talking about this study here, the one that was done by the professor from New Zealand named Neil Gemmell?
I just have some basic notes on it.
Yeah, if you want to talk about the DNA study, go for it, dude.
Well, I figure it's kind of a good segue. You know what I mean? Because one of the main theories that came out of that study was that it could be eels, because eel DNA was one of the most common DNAs found within the water, and they were saying
eel DNA all over the place in the loch, everywhere.
Yeah,
eel DNA.
Yeah. Oh, it's splattered everywhere.
Everywhere.
I understand.
Yeah. Don't go swimming.
But they obviously found. Yeah, right. they found DNA from even land-based animals and stuff, because obviously from the rains and stuff, stuff is going to drain into the lake. So of course they're going to find all kinds of stuff that may kind of cloud up the
water,
the findings. Yeah.
Well, I guess it measures stuff that's been in proximity to the organisms, not necessarily the organisms themselves, and they shed these small particles, and then they what do? They concentrate and sequence and then compare to this international database to see what they've got. I think you would be
definitely more qualified to explain that process. That's for sure.
DNA sequencing, that might be above my pay grade.
Well, hey, she's a physicist, not a DNA sequencer.
Damn it,
sure,
man.
but
she's a physicist.
In general, though, I guarantee you know more about that than I do.
Captain, I'm a physicist, not a DNA sequencer.
I did find it interesting, though, what they didn't find. They didn't find sharks. They didn't find any kind of dinosaur DNA, and they didn't find catfish. But like Agent ETA said, they found lots of eel DNA, but they couldn't tell if it was from many eels or one giant eel.
Yeah. So like you had said, two of the big theories as far as a natural reason why people might be observing what they claim to be observing as far as a big monster or something like that being present in the lake is it could have been a catfish or maybe a giant sturgeon. And as a matter of fact, this study that we had just mentioned, it actually ruled that out. Well, as far as what they found, because they didn't find any evidence for either one of those two species to be present in the lake.
Well, 20% of the DNA that they found was unexplained, meaning they can't account for it using the database.
Yes. Yes, and that's one of the big things that people talk about. People that they support the study because it's solid science that they were doing, but they always bring up, hey, there was actually a certain segment that was unidentified DNA, that they didn't, they can't, pinpoint a specific species, for that. So
well, and
that's
who knows? Who knows what kind of DNA Nessie has?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's one of the arguments too. Is Nessie reptile or is it like a mammal?
But we do know for sure there was a big giant eel making a mess all over the damn loch.
Yeah, it's possible.
That was definitely proven by the DNA study. Am I right? Yeah.
Well. I don't know. It's kind of funny that you would say that, because one of the eel species that has been thought to be present there was what one of the names for it is called the eunuch eel.
Serious?
So,
that can't be a real thing.
I think you're making it up.
No, look it up. Look it up, bro. Google that shit, bro.
All right. I'm going to look that up right now, and I'm kind of a little bit worried about what the results are going to be, but let's see.
Good luck.
Hey, all right. So make sure you don't include the word hentai in there.
Yeah. Oh wait. Oh my God. I can't. Oh my. I'm blind. I can't believe it. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
No. I would just like to take this moment to say thank you to Japan.
All right. Well,
in general,
that is a real thing. In general. Okay. I stand corrected. I'm looking at a bunch of pictures of eels, and none of them look the slightest bit like a penis at all. So not even a little bit. Anyways, maybe edit that bit out. I don't know.
No, please don't. All right. So where do we pick up here?
Oh, we were talking about the environmental DNA sequencing.
Big giant eels spraying DNA all over the damn place.
No, we're done with that part.
Oh, sorry. Okay, get my
Mr.
mind out
Neil
of the gutter.
Gemmell. Yeah, dude, come on now, bro. Yeah. No, but I do appreciate you.
Yeah, we're switching. Well, usually this is ETA's job.
No, that's what I was saying. No, I like it. I like what's going on here. This is very enjoyable for me to sit back and.
It's getting weird.
No, weird is great. Weird is good, dude. That's
weird is great. Weird is good.
Yeah, like the old saying, variety. It's a spice of life, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the variety gets weird, baby. All right, maybe we might want to edit that part out.
Yeah,
that sounded kind of creepy.
Yeah, we'll see. Hey, sometimes this stuff kind of falls. You got to try it out, and sometimes it falls flat. And if I feel like it falls flat, I'll just cut it out. No big deal.
Well, I'll tell you what I am going to do is blame it on the conspiracy juice.
Oh yeah. I've been hitting that a little bit myself. We got some conspiracy rum that we got.
I got some conspiracy Kettle One.
Oh shit, Kettle One's not bad. Mm-hmm. It's not bad.
Yeah, man. I got my pinky up too.
So Agent Anderson was talking about the loch itself, and I wanted to discuss the geology of the loch. There's a fault that's super straight. You can see it from space. That's the Great Glen Fault, and it cuts diagonally from Highland to Inverness. And it's important because
real quick, Diagon Alley, I think would be a great name for like a new age punk band.
If they don't get sued.
Yeah. That'd be sweet. Actually, I think that's a good name. I'm sorry. I'm just saying this all. I'll shut up.
Hey, Diagon Alley.
I'm sorry to so effortlessly derail the podcast.
No, but ETA, do you know where? I don't think you know where that's from. Diagon Alley.
I don't. No, I thought that was a new word that Agent Ether just made up.
No, it's from Harry Potter.
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
okay, I did not know that.
That's why it's funny. But
yeah.
Now, yeah. Not. Okay, now that makes more sense. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So as I was saying, there's this fault. You can see it from space, and it's important because it has lateral movement. And this was before the plate tectonics theory was established. There was a scientist who showed that this lateral movement was possible, and this is called a strike slip or a wrench fault. And the way it moves has produced this zone of shattered rock. It's 1/2 mile wide, and it's mostly under the Loch Ness itself. It erodes very easily and accounts for the straightness of this fault. And because of the way the fault is, it's a strike slip fault. It's actually very active, and it averages 3 quakes per century at about a Richter level of 4. And in 1816, there was the strongest ever recorded, and it was felt all over Scotland. The Loch Ness itself is 10,000 years old and dates back from the end of the last ice age when huge glaciers filled the valley above the present watershed. So the depth of the lake is actually 600 feet below sea level, and the floor is very smooth with layers of sediment and hard clay. And it's interesting because Agent Anderson mentioned how deep it was, but what some people might not realize is how deep it is, what some people might not realize is how deep it gets, how quickly. So 60 feet from the shore, it's 500 feet down.
Dang, that's pretty crazy.
Huh. I wonder how good the fishing is there.
That's a good question.
Probably, I
Ely.
imagine it's not bad.
But there's not sturgeon and catfish, apparently.
Yeah, true enough. That's, well, from what I understand, yeah.
People shouldn't be eating catfish anyways. They're so weird looking.
Oh, no. You ever had good fried catfish?
Actually, no, I haven't.
I actually have. Sounds
Make us some
bad.
catfish, Agent ETA.
I'd be down. I
Yeah.
could, all right, some of the areas I fish in around where I live right now, there's catfish. Now, I wouldn't necessarily eat this catfish because it's from the Colorado River, and I have found plenty of parasite upon them. So,
Never mind.
like, don't get me wrong, I enjoy catching them, and but I typically do catch and release with those for sure because it's just
They can get big,
when you-
though. Catfish can get really big.
Oh yeah, catfish can get huge. I mean, there's catfish around the world that literally are big enough to swallow a full-grown human being. You know what I mean? Literally, they're that freaking big. Like in Southeast Asia and even in the Amazon as well. There's some giant species of catfish, and they have such a giant mouth too. And they tend the way that they operate is like they're ambush predators, and they tend to swallow prey whole a lot of times too, if it's the right size, of course, for whatever size catfish you're talking about. But no, people, think the catfish is an ugly creature, but I actually find them pretty fascinating. I mean, there's so many different variant species of catfish, and I don't know that I find them pretty interesting. And not only, because how many different types of catfish there are, but also catfish are like prehistoric creatures, man. They've been around forever, But I just find, I don't know. I'm sorry to go off on that wild tangent, but I do find
cool.
catfish pretty interesting.
ETA has promised to come up to where I live in Northern California and go fishing with me and catch some good shit and cook it.
Oh, dude, we're gonna go crab fishing. We're gonna throw some crab snares off of the coast there. We're gonna get some like rockfish and stuff. There's some good eating. There's some good eating up where you're at.
The only thing I know about fishing is that you have a fishing pole and you have a hook on a line and you put some Velveeta cheese on the hook, and then fish eat the Velveeta cheese, and then you catch them and eat them, I guess. Like that's literally the extent of my fishing knowledge. That's as much as I know.
Maybe in a lake that has like domesticated catfish or something that always has like contact with humans. Like they're eating like, chunks of bread and stuff all the time.
We have stocked lakes up here too. In addition to having the ocean, which is up here really good fishing, we have stocked lakes.
Oh, I mean, they have to stock the lakes, because there's just too many people fishing it. There's just no way that it could support the population. Let's talk about some of the more prominent sightings throughout the years. So the first kind of modern sighting was in 1871 when somebody named D. Mackenzie witnessed an object like a log or upturned boat wiggling around and churning up the water. He said it moved slowly at first and then it gained speed and disappeared. A little bit later, in 1888, Alexander MacDonald also saw the monster. He described it as a large, stubbly-legged animal that looked like a salamander. It surfaced from the loch and then got within 50 yards of the shore before it disappeared. But there's a handful of sightings from, times of old. But the modern era of the Loch Ness Monster really began in the early 1930s. And that's when you had a really, really well-publicized sighting that you saw some mass media interest and like worldwide attention. So it was no longer just local lore and local stories, but, because of the, modern news media, it traveled the globe. So you had people from all over the world becoming interesting. And at the same time, in the early 30s, some people think that this is possibly the reason why a new road had been built around the Loch Ness, which allowed people better access. So it was a lot easier for just about anybody to go there. You didn't have to hire, some kind of special guide that could hike you through the wildernesses of Scotland,
Just in general, you're going to have a whole lot more people in the area traveling that area, so
Yeah.
that the Loch Ness Monster myth or tale, whatever you want to call it, is so popular in that area that, there's going to be plenty of people that might just be, on their way home from work and they have a couple extra minutes or something like that. And that they're just like, oh, I think I'll stop off to the side and take a look at the loch. If anything, maybe they don't even have that in mind. Maybe they're just enjoying the scenery. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they happen to see something that looks off to them, or like, wait, what the heck is that type of thing? You know what I mean? So that occurrence just in general is going to jump up, I think, for sure. You know what I mean? After that road was built. You know what I mean?
And in addition to that, various outlets and entities were offering prizes if anybody could capture Nessie, dead or alive. And for example, one circus owner named Bertram Mills offered a reward of £20,000 if anybody could bring Nessie alive to his circus. And in today's money, £20,000 is like all of the money that's, because of inflation.
Yeah.
I don't know. You'd have to look that one up.
Obviously that's a hollow promise, because I'm sure that guy, was just, designed for attention,
Right. Yeah.
That guy, even if you did bring Nessie to his circus or whatever, he still probably wouldn't pay you. He ain't got that money.
He's not gonna. One circus owner. I mean, I don't know how much money could this guy have. I doubt he had that much, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the 1930s, we have a couple of interesting sightings. Like in 1933, George Spicer and his wife saw how they described it. They saw a most extraordinary form of animal cross the road. So I can't really do a Scottish accent, which is kind of stupid because I am actually part Scottish, if you couldn't tell by the name, which is, but anyways, an animal crossed the road in front of their car. It had a large body about 4 feet high and 25 feet long. Its neck was long, wavy, and narrow, and it was a little thicker than an elephant's trunk and as long as the width of the road, which was about 12 feet. So that was like the head and neck region were about 12 feet long. It crossed the road towards the loch and it left a trail as it went because it was coming through the brush. And then it crossed the road and it went into the bushes on the other side and disappeared towards the loch. And they didn't see any more of it after that. Also,
sounds a little bit more like a sighting of Chupacabra than Nessie.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been Chupacabra. You never know. Geographically speaking, it's unlikely, but hey.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you're right.
I got an open mind, so what the hell, right?
Which, by the way, I hope soon we could do an episode on that because
hell
that was
yeah,
fun.
I will put it on the calendar right now. I will put Chupacabra. No, just kidding.
Man, there's an X-Files episode with the Chupacabra. It was so good. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
What you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Excellent episode. I really enjoyed it.
My favorite cryptid episode of the X-Files, though, is when he was hunting, they were hunting like a lizard, like a kind of like a were lizard kind of a cryptid. But it turns out, spoilers, you find out at the end of the episode that it was actually a lizard that had gotten bitten by a human. So it was like a were-human or something. It was.
I don't think I've seen this episode.
It was on one of the later seasons, but it was
okay.
It was. I think it was like season 8. I forget which. It's been a while. But one of those seasons where overall the season wasn't that great, but they had a couple of episodes that were kind of humorous that were like really a lot of fun. And this was one of them.
Yeah, because at a certain point, X-Files like kind of they started injecting a little bit more humor, right? As far as being like they started becoming a little bit less serious about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I kind of lost interest after the whole. I don't know. They went on a tangent. I love the creature features. Those were my favorite.
Yeah, they used to do like it didn't used to be like an overarching plot. It would just be sort of every episode was standalone, and they would take on maybe a cryptid or like a particular type of alien or something. And then, but over time they got more and more into like this overarching plot with, like the smoking man and all this other stuff. It was good at first, but they just kept it going and going. And at some point you're like, all right, just get back to the creature of the week, like I want more chupacabras, less aliens,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Agree with
Says
that.
the Alien Conspiracy Podcast.
I would never. All right, where was I? Let's get back to the Loch Ness Monster. So also in 1933, Hugh Gray saw Nessie. He took actually the first ever photograph of it. And it's a picture of, I looked it up. It's a blurry something. It's definitely a picture and it's definitely something. It's been analyzed by many, many people, and there are convincing arguments on both sides. Some people say it was like a dog swimming in the water with a stick in its mouth, but that's kind of like a skeptical explanation, but people have analyzed it and said, well, because of this, that, and the other, it can't really be a dog with a stick in its mouth, which is kind of convincing. But I mean, like this picture, I'm on the fence because it's just kind of like blurry and you can't really tell what it is. So it's really hard to come down on one side or the other. But it is historically interesting because it's the first picture of the Loch Ness Monster, at least maybe, I don't know. But anyways, Gray estimated that the creature was 40 feet long with a rounded back and a muscular tail. The next sighting, so I'm not going to talk about every single sighting because there's like thousands of them. I'm just going to talk about like some of the most prominent ones. So fast forward to 1934, Arthur Grant almost hit Nessie while riding his motorcycle at 1 a.m. in the morning. He was driving along and a large shape loomed from the right side of the road. He described it as having a small head and a long neck, and it looked like a cross between a seal and a plesiosaur. It saw him and crossed the road toward the loch. He got off his motorcycle and followed it, but as it entered the water, he only saw ripples where it had disappeared.
Were you talking? Were you planning on talking about the surgeon's photo?
Oh yeah, that's actually was next on my list. This one's actually kind of fun. So the surgeon's photo was taken in 1934. And it's probably the most famous photo. If you can think of like an iconic photo of the Loch Ness Monster that you've seen.
By far.
It's probably this photo. Yeah.
By far. This is going to be the photo that most everybody who thinks about the Loch Ness Monster, that's probably going to be the first mental image they have. That was true for me, to be quite honest. When I first found out that this was going to be the next episode we did, I was like, that was the mental image I had. Boom. Hey. Yeah. Because what it kind of reminds me also is like these large plastic dinosaur toys that I had when I was a kid. Right. And like, I think there was one that I had like a brontosaurus or something like that. And like, this to me, that like this picture, the surgeon's photo looks like a plastic toy dipped up out of the water, just like the neck, the tall neck of like, some sort of a plastic dinosaur toy, to be quite honest, like, I don't know, man. Like, it's just like, if it was a real photo, which actually, by the way, for our listeners, this photo was definitively proven to be a hoax.
Well, hold on there. It is a real photo.
It is, but it was also revealed to have been a hoax from what I understand, right? By Alistair Boyd.
Yeah, it's definitely a hoax. So the photo shows what looks like a long neck with a head, right? And it kind of looks like a shadow. Like you can't really see the features that well. But so apparently there were actually 4 photos taken as the story goes, but only this one is clear. The other ones didn't develop that well or were like too blurry to make anything out. And the photo was originally supposedly taken by a doctor named Robert Kenneth Wilson, and he was supposedly a gynecologist working in London. Now, that's like the official story, but it turns out that when you see the picture, it's usually cropped or zoomed in a lot. So it looks.
Hey, could I be honest with you for a quick second?
What's up?
When I see this photo, you know what it really reminds me of?
I have no idea.
That cartoon movie from my childhood, The Land Before Time.
Oh shit! The Land Before Time.
Movie. That's like from what, 80, 88?
I think.
Yeah,
Or
1988.
had to have been like either early 90s or late 80s.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I grew up with that.
His mom dies, and you're just like, this movie sucks.
Just give the thing a star leaf.
That movie gave me the feels when I was a kid.
It
you know
did.
what I mean? It was an important movie in my upbringing.
And and you can still watch it. It's one of those timeless movies. My kids have seen it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good film.
Oh, hell yeah. Well, it's still a good film for kids, for sure. Like, I think it spans the test of time. You know what I mean?
It's kind of depressing,
it's a good damn movie.
It's like a Disney movie. Somebody always has to die.
The whole world, everybody dies at the end. Spoiler alert.
No, don't. Damn it. But you still had the
Littlefoot.
There's Littlefoot, right? And then Petrie was Petrie the and Ducky. Remember Ducky?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ducky.
Yes.
Yeah, dude.
So cute. They're so cute, and they each have their own little personalities. Now I'm gonna watch that tomorrow.
Yeah, that was my jam growing up too. Yeah,
I'm never watching that movie again. It's too depressing. I can't handle it.
It has a good ending. They live happily ever after, and the T-Rex gets killed.
Yeah, like 5 dinosaurs live happily ever after. Everybody else dies. It's just those 5.
What was the T-Rex called? Was it
Sharptooth?
Yeah.
Is it Sharptooth?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wasn't there another one called like Chomper or some shit too, though?
That was the little offspring in the sequels, yeah.
The sequels are...
Am I mixing?
Was it Jerkface and Dickhead?
No.
I don't know.
There's only one movie. Come on, guys. Ignore those are made for TV.
No, you're right. No, you're right. Yeah. The Land Before Time, the original, the first one, that is the only one that I accept.
Yeah. That's the only canon.
All right, let's get back to the Loch Ness Monster.
Hey, that was on topic.
That was actually not that was not as off topic as we sometimes get. It was was not that bad. That's true. Okay,
related to dinosaurs.
You
Loch
keep
Ness
that
could
in.
Be a dinosaur.
Damn it!
That's staying in for sure, man.
Okay.
Come on, it's
all your agents having all the feels. It's got to stay in.
It's one of the most depressing movies I've ever seen, and we subject our children to it. I mean, it's got to stay in. Hey, if you have kids and you want them to be an absolute train wreck when they grow up, show them this movie. They will love it. No, I'm just kidding.
It's not that bad. No, it's a good lesson. It is a good lesson.
Yeah,
the movie is a good lesson. I think.
Your parents are going to die. Your friends are going to die. Everybody in your life is going to die.
It's a lesson in friendship and resilience.
Because you don't want happy children. You want them to have a midlife crisis when they're fucking 8 years old. No.
It's a small microcosm of a representation of an entire lifespan. You know what I mean? Because it's inevitable, death, of course, for any entity, anything that is alive. You're going to die.
For the dinosaurs, there sure fucking was. Big Rock decided that.
Throughout your life, if you're going to live a good life, you need to have trials and tribulations and struggles and good times and bad times.
Hey, speak for yourself,
to
man.
Be worth it.
I'm gonna fucking ascend to the astral plane. All right, so I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I plan on
an astral god.
Yeah,
Star Child.
All right. So let's get back to the picture.
Oh, did we just get off topic again?
Let's get back to this picture. So it is,
my bad.
It is unfortunately is kind of, it's kind of a bummer, but it is unfortunately a hoax. If you look at the picture in close detail, it's usually shown cropped or zoomed in on the Loch Ness Monster itself, and it makes it look like it's much bigger than it is. If you look at the full image, in perspective, what appears to be big waves are actually small ripples. Mm-hmm. And people have analyzed the object, and they say that the object in the picture is probably like 2 or 3 feet, not like really like 10 feet or really big or whatever, witnesses may say it is. So what happened was the object was actually, it was a toy submarine modified by a dude named Christian Sperling. So what happened was a guy named Marmaduke Weatherall. That's the most goddamn English name I've heard in my entire life.
Marmaduke
Weatherall.
Good day to you, sir. What is your name, might I ask?
Marmaduke.
My name is Marmaduke.
Marmalade.
I want a T-shirt with it says, Marmaduke Weatherall. It's just, that's quite the name right there.
That is a powerful name.
Yeah, well, dude, you would not be trifling with somebody named Marmaduke Weatherall.
Sounds like a knight.
I'd be like, wait a minute,
That's an
what's your
English
name?
boxer if I ever heard it.
There you go.
Oh, that might be a bare knuckled English boxer.
Yes, sir.
I guarantee
one of those
you
guys.
that fellow went through his entire life suffering a grand total of 0 fools. 0.
Yeah, he probably has a flattened nose through experience. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
The bridge of his nose is not, it's not arched like the average individual. It's probably flat.
He just sounds like an overall badass.
Anyways, Marmaduke. Marmaduke was the father-in-law of Christian Sperling, who I just mentioned. And what happened was his employer was the Daily Mail, and they publicly ridiculed him over some footprints, some Nessie footprints that he had brought to the paper that had turned out to be hoax. Now, Marmaduke, being somebody who suffers 0 fools and is not one to be trifled with, he decided to create an elaborate hoax to get back at the Daily Mail. So he and some co-conspirators, he went and bought a toy from F.W. Woolworth's, which I'm guessing is, a department store in England. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
And he had a Christian Sperling sculpted a head and neck out of wood putty. They tested the thing out in a pond before taking it out to the Loch Ness. So they took it to an area near the Altsay. I don't know how to pronounce this, man. My ancestors are rolling in their graves. It's Altssaigh. I mean, how would you say that? Altsay. Altsay? Altsay?
Yeah, no, hell if I know.
I don't know. Anyways, the whatever tea house, if you want to look it up, that word tea house. And when they heard a water bailiff, apparently that's, police that operate in, on, around, or about the water. They call them water bailiffs. They heard a water bailiff approaching. Duke Weatherall sank the model with his foot, and he later said that it was presumably still in the loch. So,
oh man, can you imagine finding that? That'd be
I know.
the find of the century, man.
Yeah, forget finding the Loch Ness Monster, man. That's what I want in my museum.
Mm-hmm.
I want it in my house.
They took the photos of this. It was a toy submarine with a big, small putty head built on it. And they photographed it. They gave the photos to their friend Wilson, remember that I mentioned earlier, that was the London gynecologist, to have them developed. And apparently Wilson, he enjoyed a good prank. So he sent them to the Daily Mail. And I'm guessing they had the friend do this rather than do it directly because, he kind of worked there and they would know if he did it or he had his son-in-law do it, they would be onto him. So he gave it to one of his friends to do. They sent it in the Daily Mail. They published the photo, and they announced that the monster had been photographed and that it was real. And therefore, Marmaduke successfully completed probably one of the best trolls in known history. I mean, it's normally hoaxes I'm not a big fan of because it's kind of like you're making fun of people. But in this case, it's a really, really fun hoax. It's got to be up there with one of the best hoaxes ever, right? Because talk about playing the long game too,
You know how awesome it would be to pull that off and be the guy that pulled that off? I tricked them for generations.
So Marmaduke is let me get this straight. Marmaduke is a dude.
Marmaduke.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that the same guy that is famous for giving interesting interviews to like famous musicians and stuff? And
not that I know of.
What does he look like?
I have not seen a picture of him actually.
Like a duke.
Dang it! Never mind. I may be thinking about a different person that has a very similar name, although I am blanking at the moment as far as what the name is.
I mean, it could be. I'm not sure. I don't know really anything about his career outside of this particular case. Actually,
he has a camera with a monkey on it. I'll put it in the Discord.
All right.
Huh.
And for all you listeners, our Discord is currently closed, so you can't see it. But if anybody wants to join our Discord, let me know. I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea. It's just, we just use it for chatting amongst ourselves.
And sometimes I put pictures of Elmer Fudd there too.
And posting completely inappropriate pictures and GIFs and things that you probably don't want to see.
Just join Facebook.
Yeah, join Facebook. It's much better.
It's a lot of fun. We're all having fun over there.
If you think Facebook is a dumpster fire, well, you haven't seen our Discord. Yeah.
Oh boy.
All right. Anyways, so that was the most successful troll in the history of the human race, and like it went on. It became the iconic picture. I mean, it's just, I don't think you can really understate just how successful this guy was. It's pretty breathtaking, actually. All right, let's move on to some more famous sightings. In 1951, Mr. Lachlan Stewart witnessed something moving on the loch. He ran to the shore and he saw 3 humps about 50 yards away. Each hump was about 5 feet long, and they were moving together at a fast speed. He took a photograph of it, which clearly shows the 3 humps. After he took the photo, he saw a small head and long neck come out of the water. The creature turned towards the center of the lake and dove, disappearing under the water. He estimated that the head and neck were about 6 feet in length, and he saw motion in the water about 20 feet behind the 3rd hump that he assumed was a tail. So that's probably another really famous, but not quite as famous as the last one, but it's another really famous witness and photo that we
Yeah. It's right up, that photo is right up there with it. I mean, it's a close, second, or third, but it's right there.
Yeah, it does show up. It's the one with like the 3, the 3 humps. It's a pretty famous photo. Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving right along to 1954, this is the first sonar event. A fishing boat named Rival 3 saw a large object on sonar. It kept pace with a boat for about 2,600 feet, or approximately half a mile, at a depth of about 479 feet. And the interesting thing about this is that the sonar return was much larger than what you would expect from anything that should be in the loch. So we know what should be living there. There's a couple of types of fish and different other things, but nothing should be able to give a sonar return as big as what they saw. And that's why it's interesting. On the other hand, skeptics say it was, like some rogue plankton, or perhaps some, seaweed that had, come in from the ocean, or perhaps a seal or something that shouldn't have been there, but was. At the end of the day, we don't really know. We just have to say that it was something unusual at the very least.
It was there, whatever it was.
Yep. It was a real something. I mean, the way sonar works, you're not going to get a return on something that is nothing. It's at least something, I guess.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. All right. In 1960, aeronautical engineer Tim Dinsdale caught Nessie on camera. He took 40 feet of film that shows a hump going across the loch, leaving a wake. And you can actually look this up online. This might be the most famous video taken ever.
It's been a part of quite a few like documentaries. Like if you've ever watched like a History Channel like documentary on the Loch Ness Monster, you've probably seen this, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. It's like stuff like this makes me want to do a live show and figure out how to deal with all like the legal ramifications so that we could show some of this stuff. But I mean, you see something in the distance and it's definitely kind of weird looking, but you don't really see enough detail in the video. You can't really tell what it is. You can just see that there's something there and it's leaving a wake. But later shows have, more recent shows have done enhancements or analysts or whatever. But one of the shows did it that I'm thinking of. I think it was Discovery Channel. I forgot to put up my notes,
or
but whichever.
Like National Geographic or
one
of those ones.
That might be it.
It's probably one of those ones. They're all kind of they're kind of similar. As far as what they do.
Yeah. but they did like an enhancement of it, and they found what looked to be the rear body of a creature under the water. And the person doing the analysis said that at first they were very skeptical, but after doing the analysis, they weren't so sure. Like, they weren't convinced necessarily, but they weren't necessarily a hardcore skeptic. Like, they went into it thinking, it's bullshit, but it's a paycheck, whatever. And then they come out of it going, well, maybe,
could
I don't know.
Could be some, but there's nothing definitive.
Yeah.
Which I can respect, because like they're taking a chance at that point with that statement, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's weird. It's not necessarily conclusive, but it's definitely an interesting video that anybody interested should definitely check out.
Yeah.
All right. Next up on the list in chronological order, in 1973, Mr. Jenkins of Pontclair, who lived in a house on the shore of the Loch Ness, he was outside messing around with a tractor. He was trying to get it started, and he put some starter fluid in the engine. When he turned it on to start it up, it created a loud explosion when the engine ignited. It was so loud that his wife, who was inside of the house, heard it. He also heard, near the water, he heard a loud splash, as if something had been thrown into the water. At the time, he thought that it was a little unusual. He got out of the tractor, and he walked around to get a better view of the shore. He noticed some concentric circles in the water near a jetty. An animal quietly emerged from the water and then submerged straight down. It appeared again, and then it swam off. It seemed to have a smooth motion while it was swimming. It had a head and neck that stuck up above the water, and he said it was slate black, and it looked like it was about 9 inches in diameter. It had a slit mouth, some large scales on top of its head, but not on its neck, and it had a tiny eye above its mouth. And there's
weird.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting description. And here you have,
it could be a giant eel.
We'll get to that. Yeah, but I mean, that's one of the
mutated eel.
To get ahead of ourselves a little bit, that's one of the foremost explanations to explain people who are actually seeing something and who aren't making it up, because this guy didn't own a newspaper. He wasn't a reporter. He didn't have anything to gain financially. Maybe he was a person who liked to tell tall tales. But on the other hand, I'm kind of like going over just a couple, but there's so many people who saw something similar to this that it's hard to say that everybody is making something up. So here you have somebody who's just messing around with his tractor. He really doesn't have anything to gain at all from creating a fabricated story like this, at least not that I could tell. So why would he just make something like this up? I don't know. Maybe he wanted the attention. Who knows? 15 minutes of fame? I don't know.
I mean, yeah.
I don't know. Somebody who's not accustomed to fame doesn't really like it when it's just like brought to them, you know, they're a celebrity overnight. So I don't know. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, to me, that kind of seems to make more sense, that like your average individual probably wouldn't want the attention, you know? So for your average individual to make, you know, some kind of a claim. So I don't know. It takes a certain amount of effort to even make the claim. You know what I mean? To put yourself out there like that. So, you know, I don't know. And there could be something within the culture that you know I'm not understanding as far as, you know, how popular it is. You know, but like I don't know. There's so many people that have stated the same thing as far as what they've seen.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be an inspiration for it somewhere, right? So I mean, I always think that. For the longest time, I thought the Vikings shaped their ships after the sea creatures that they witnessed. You know what I mean? So hence the giant mastheads that look similar to Nessie, if you will. But I don't know. Like it's somebody, you got to have some inspiration for it.
For sure. Comes from somewhere.
That's actually an interesting angle. I wonder if that is based on something in reality. Because
I've tried looking it up, and I can't find anything concrete. And that's what the angle I was going for it for. But I can't find like some juicy material on it to really base it off. But there is some little, you know, opinions about it. But
sometimes legends aren't based on anything in reality, but other times, like let's say the Trojan horse or whatever, sometimes it's absolutely based on something that really happened. So it's just kind of interesting to ask what if, right?
Right. Correct. Yeah. Spark that the critical thinking and imagination. Yeah, why not?
Yeah. I'm skipping an awful lot of anecdotes, but let's skip ahead to 2007. So it's not that there wasn't anything that happened in the meantime between 1973 and 2007, but at some point there's enough similarity to where you're just sort of beating a dead horse. And, you know, do you really want to hear us do hours and hours of just reading anecdotes of Nessie? I mean, so I wanted to kind of cut some of those out that I found. There's just
we're talking about like the eunuch eel.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. We got to leave time for things like the eunuch eel and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. So I cut out a lot of stuff. So at this point, I decided to fast forward a little bit and talk about some more modern stuff that's, you know, maybe a little more relevant to people who are like, you know, possibly alive when it happened. So let's fast forward to 2007 when a man named Gordon Holmes caught something moving across the water on video. He described it as jet black and 45 or 46 feet long. And if you can look up this video, so just Google Gordon Holmes Loch Ness Monster or something like that, and you can find the video. And it does show something, but just like some of the previous things we've talked about, there's not really enough detail to say 100% that this is the Loch Ness Monster. I mean, it could be a guy on a jet ski. It could be a dog. Well, maybe not a guy on a jet ski, but you know what I mean? Like it's open to interpretation, but it's probably one of the better modern sightings that you can actually see on video. And in 2011, a boat captain named Marcus Atkinson photographed a sonar image of a 5-foot wide unidentified swimming object, which is, you know, right up my alley, that followed his boat for 2 minutes at a depth of 75 feet. Some people say that it was like algae or, you know, rogue amoebas or whatever, but other people say that it was a truly anonymous happening. And that's another sort of modern thing that you might be, there's a bunch of them, even in the modern era. That's just like kind of a couple of them. But there's been so many sightings and photographs and videos and anecdotes and everything throughout the years that you couldn't possibly go over them all unless you wanted to do like a 24-hour podcast on just, you know, multiple. There are entire podcasts, I'm sure, about the Loch Ness Monster. In addition to these sightings, there were also expeditions over the years. People like who got together to try to basically scientifically try to find evidence of Nessie. But all of those were sort of inconclusive, but they do have some good evidence. I took some notes on those. Maybe I'll talk about those in a little bit, but right now I feel like I've been talking for a little bit of time, so maybe I'll turn it over to somebody else for a different topic to kind of mix it up a little bit.
Well, you forgot to mention the most recent photo, which was taken in September of 2019.
Okay.
And this was one Steve Chalice. He was on vacation in Scotland. I'm not sure if he was by or in a castle. I think it's an older castle, so probably he was just by it on the West Bank in Loch Ness. And he took this photo. Now, he says he believes it's a catfish or a sturgeon because there's catfish which can get up to 660 pounds. That's the one in the Guinness Book of World Records.
That's a big fish.
It is a big fish, but you know, again, we've talked about all this DNA evidence and how they haven't found any catfish in the Loch Ness. So it's a great photo. I'll put it online. It does look like a catfish to me because of the patterns. I guess every catfish has specific patterns on its back, and it's kind of like a fingerprint. And some people think the photo is faked, because there's this image of a 286-pound catfish taken by Benjamin Grunder, and the patterns look kind of the same when you blow up the picture from Loch Ness. But this guy, he insists, he says, you know, I've sent it to some friends for analysis, and it's a real photo. I just don't know what it is. I think it's a fish, but it could be Loch Ness. And that's the most recent photo.
I think it's a fish.
Think it's a fish, but it could be Nessie.
A fishy.
That's kind of a strange thing to say because...
Isn't that weird? So he takes the picture, he releases it, but then he's like, I think it's a fish, but here, have this picture that might also be the Loch Ness Monster.
If you have an opinion, you got an opinion. Like, you're not going to just say, well, this is, hey, man, I dropped my basketball in the lake, but it could have been Nessie. I don't know. Just saying, it might not be. Who says it? I mean, if you're going to say it's Nessie, just grow a pair and say it's Nessie. Say, yeah, this is Nessie. I saw, or just say, I took a picture and I'm not sure what it is. But if it's a catfish, why would you say that I took a picture of Nessie, but it's actually a catfish? I don't understand. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, and that was a quote from him. That wasn't just paraphrasing. Like, he said he thought it was. So it was very strange. But that was the news article I found, so I thought I'd mention it.
Okay. All right. Did you have something before I get on to some of the studies or whatever? Did you have something you wanted to talk about, Agent ETA or Agent Kruger?
No, I'm good. I'm sorry.
All right.
I'll tell you what.
What?
No, I just told you what.
Okay. Chicken butt. All right, let's get into some of these studies. There have been large-scale efforts to find some evidence of Nessie throughout the years. For example, in 1967 and 68, they did a sonar study, and they got some inconclusive hits that could have been Nessie, but may or may not have been. Starting in 1972 and going all the way through 2008, a dude named Robert Rines led multiple expeditions using sonar trying to identify or to find Nessie. So what his goal was to identify strange objects with sonar and then use submerged cameras to photograph anything that was kind of weird. He produced several controversial photographs, and you can find these online. They're compelling. Some of them are not that compelling or interesting, but there's a few of them where you kind of look at them and you go, well, that looks like something that might not be normal. It looks a little weird, but they're not that conclusive because I don't know if we mentioned it or not, but one of the big problems with finding the Loch Ness Monster is that the water in the Loch Ness is very, very hard to see through. The area has a lot of like peat, which it's, we're not talking about like a dude named Pete. It's like actual PEAT. It's like kind of like swampy or like decaying vegetable matter. So the water itself is very, very foggy and cloudy, and you can't really see that far in the water at all. So it makes it really hard to observe anything under there, whether or not you have a camera on a submarine or whatever you have. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be able to see more than a couple of feet in front of it at the very best. It gets really thick.
Yeah, that stuff is tough to see through. And don't we know more about space than we do our own oceans? And I know the Loch isn't like the whole ocean, but it just goes to show that it's hard to navigate, the waters and really get a like firm grasp on what's in there.
Yeah, it's really hard to explore. So there are some photos, but they could be something interesting, but then again, maybe not. I don't know. In 2008, Rines said that maybe Nessie or the Nessie type species or whatever was extinct, having succumbed to global warming. On the other hand, it could be that because he had never found the smoking gun, he was sort of feeling discouraged after so many years of trying. 1972 to 2008 was his last expedition, so that's a long time to look for something. The next one that I have here is in 1987, 24 boats equipped with echo. This, by the way, this is probably the most famous event or the most famous attempt to find Nessie using sonar or echo sounding, actually. In 1987, they used 24 boats. They were equipped with echo sounding equipment, and they kind of scanned most of the Loch Ness, but there are some side areas that they couldn't get to. But they did get some interesting results. They were sort of inconclusive. Again, it was not a smoking gun, and some hits were kind of declared to be like sort of debris. Other people said that, there was motion and it was hard to explain what they saw. One sonar expert named Daryl Lawrence said that there's something here that we don't understand, And there's something here that's larger than a fish, maybe some species that hasn't been detected before. I don't know. So you can explain it away as something that's like, a couple of fish swimming together, or maybe like a seal that had wandered in from the ocean. On the other hand, the sonar that they used was pretty sensitive. It had a range of 1,300 feet and could see objects as small as 1 foot and could discern objects that were 1 foot apart. So if two fish were swimming near each other, they'd have to be pretty close to where you couldn't tell them apart on the sonar or the echo sounding equipment or whatever. On the first day that they were doing this is when they found the most interesting results. They got 3 strong hits throughout the day, ranging from 256 feet to 590 feet depth. These were much larger than what you would expect from the known fish in the area or in the loch. They were larger than a shark, but smaller than a whale. And then the following day, they did another sweep, and they again sent some ships to this area where they found these 3 contacts, and there was nothing there. So that suggests that it was not like a stationary object, but something that was moving around, obviously, because if it was stationary, it would have been there again. And not all of them were they weren't like on the ground necessarily, so you wouldn't expect them to be stationary, but you never know. But they didn't actually. They only got those 3 hits were the best evidence that they got. And the second day, they didn't really get anything unusual. Now, because they didn't have like a smoking gun or like a bloody corpse they could drag out of the loch, a lot of media outlets declared that it was a complete flop. And I think I mentioned this was like a complete circus, this whole event. There was media swarming. They rented every boat available they could get their hands on, to go get out there on the water and film the goings on of the study and everything. It was a pretty big deal back in the day. But again, they didn't find hard proof, even though they did get 3 really good returns. And that was probably that, even to this day, that might be still the biggest or most famous study ever done. But there have been some done since. For example, in 1992, the ship, the MV Simrad, they went and carried out the first complete hydrographic survey, whatever that is. I'm guessing they're mapping the Loch Ness. They completed the first survey since 1903. So I guess in 1903, they completed a survey using piano wire and weights to kind of measure the depth at different points throughout the loch. This time
sounds pretty advanced.
Yeah, that was for the time,
It could have been as far. Well, the problem is that particular body of water, like we had mentioned before, drops so dramatically in depth, throughout the whole area,
Right. Back in the day, I think they got a pretty good idea of what it was like, but that was the last time. 1903 was the last time anybody tried to map it to any amount of detail. And they did a good job with the tools they had available to them. But in 1992, they used some really sophisticated sonar equipment to get a much, much better idea of what it actually looked like under there. They were looking for anything weird or whatever. They didn't find any caves, which is one of the things they looked for, because one of the ideas, if there are hidden caves underneath of the water, that could be somewhere that some sort of creature could hide,
Yeah, well, and also not just that, but also a large opening a pathway to the North Sea,
Right, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that could be a reason why it might be an animal that we haven't necessarily documented, or just a very large version of an animal, or a fish or something. I'm sorry, that we already know about.
Or hence those tremors and earthquakes. They released a fissure into
Godzilla?
a passage. Yeah, you never know, man.
Godzilla, dude.
Confirmed. Yeah. Godzilla.
No, I like that. No, I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think this could be the origin of Godzilla, actually.
No, the origin was our nuclear testing on the island. Sorry.
Well, if there was an underground passageway to the sea, an open passageway where some sort of large creature could, travel back and forth with ease, then it could be reasonable that, this could be an area that, that creature comes to periodically, maybe for mating purposes, or I don't know. Maybe it's part of their eating habits or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be possible.
It's entirely plausible. Yeah.
But you'd have to find that opening though, or that passageway.
Yeah, exactly. And they did not find it. And they did this in 1992 and 1993, and they did get a couple of anomalous hits on their sonar that were not explainable. Like they were bigger, and there was no known, no fish or nothing that should have been there that could explain. So just very similar to the last study that I talked about with sonar, they cannot figure out what was causing this. Of course, the skeptics will tell you that it was any number of things and it couldn't possibly have been an unknown species, but we don't know. It's all just sort of, we can only imagine, And so I just have a couple more of studies like this they did to talk about. In 2003, the BBC, which again, why on earth would you name a channel that? But anyways, they sponsored a search using 600
I see
sonar.
What you did there.
Yeah. 600 sonar beams and some satellite tracking, and they didn't find anything. And the people involved said that this sort of proved that there's nothing to it. But on the other hand, who knows? Maybe there was something there that they didn't find. I don't know. And finally, in 2018, an international team did a DNA survey, but we already talked about that a little bit. And they didn't necessarily find anything, but as we said previously, it may not be 100% conclusive. I think they left the door open a little bit because they had, 20% unidentified, and they may not have gotten every little last possible bit of DNA in the lake or the loch. Just because they did it doesn't mean that it was absolutely conclusive, So
and just because there's unidentified DNA samples or what have you that they found doesn't necessarily mean anything. You know what I mean? It for the very same reason, because it could mean anything at the same time. You know what I mean? It's either way, whatever, it's who knows what the hell it means is what I mean to say.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. So there's the last thing I pretty much have in my notes is there were a lot of hoaxes throughout the years, which is kind of unfortunate because anytime, even if there's just one hoax, it kind of makes the whole topic seem like it's nonsense, whether or not it is. But
especially if that hoax ends up being very popular.
Right. Yeah. But there were a couple of hoaxes that I wanted to mention that I thought were kind of fun. You got to have fun with this stuff, take it with a grain of salt and all that. But in 1930, a prankster used, now this is in and of itself, this is an item that I didn't know existed, but they used a hippopotamus foot umbrella stand. So I guess an umbrella stand built out of a hippopotamus foot. And they used that to make footprints to kind of hoax Nessie footprints.
Wait a minute. Okay. You guys don't have that umbrella holder too? What?
Yeah. No, dude.
I've never been.
When I went to IKEA, they were all sold out,
Right? No, I got mine from Christmas.
Okay. But I thought it was just such a bizarre, anyways, to me, it was such a bizarre hoax that I had to mention it. And then another one I wanted to mention was in 2004, a team trying to make a TV documentary perpetrated a hoax by constructing an animatronic plesiosaur and placing it in the loch. So this particular hoax caused at least 600 sightings throughout the loch because they made a fake monster and they put it in there and people saw it. So, there have been many, many hoaxes throughout the years, which is kind of unfortunate. Not all of them were a lot of fun, and it kind of ruins the whole topic because we do have some unexplainable things. We have a lot of photographs that I didn't talk about. There's so many photographs and videos that have not been debunked and that are really interesting that you can't really explain, that it kind of makes you wonder, dude, this could be real, right? But when you have so many hoaxes throughout the years, it's real easy to look at those hoaxes and say, well, it's all bullshit, even though it might not be. Just because there's hoaxes doesn't mean that it's all fake, right?
Yeah, well, it makes it hard. It makes it kind of hard to navigate through the truth. or to try to find the truth, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Let's move on along to Agent Ether has some possible explanations for what could cause these sightings, because when you have so many witnesses reporting something, it might not be a plesiosaur, but people might be seeing something. So what could they possibly be seeing, Agent Ether?
Some people say it's simply birds.
Oh, real? Okay. I thought you were going to go with Bigfoot. Okay, birds. All right.
Sorry.
Because when they land, they cause this V-shaped wake where they land and they're in a group. So some people could mistake them for the Loch Ness Monster.
Okay.
It's possible.
It doesn't really match the vast majority of descriptions, but sure, why not?
Why not? And then you mentioned the traveling circus. Some people believe that it was an elephant.
Oh.
Its little trunk sticking out of the water like a...
You're just taking a bath?
Just taking a bath. Well, that would just account for one sighting, not all of the sightings, but perhaps a traveling circus coming through a menagerie.
Now, the problem I would have with that explanation is that elephants can swim, but can you imagine an elephant going under the water and hanging out there for like 6 hours until somebody comes by, sticking their trunk up occasionally to breathe and never surfacing in a climate that is not their natural habitat, and they would be freezing their freaking balls off down there.
Yeah, this is Scotland that we're talking about here. It's not it's a cold climate.
Yeah,
it's not.
So you would have, in order for that to account for the sightings, people would have to. They wouldn't see the elephant go under the water or come out of the water, which I find a little, I don't know, not that plausible. But hey, you never know.
Okay, how about a Greenland shark?
I have no idea what that is.
Well, just imagine an ordinary shark with a fin.
One of the most ancient.
Right? That's right. Sticking up above the water, traveling around, creating a wake behind it. Somehow gotten in from the ocean into the Loch Ness. That's what some people believe, that it's just a shark.
Well, and one of the arguments also involved with the Greenland shark is that because like scientists don't really know how old they could potentially get. And also it's one of the sharks that one of the species that they have noticed, like the older it gets, it keeps on growing, right? It never stops growing.
So it could get pretty big.
So yeah, depending on how old it gets is depending on how big it can get, So
they keep growing.
That is,
even as they get older, they don't stop. Okay. All right.
That could be a very interesting theory right there. Yeah.
All right. And also the loch is pretty unusual. It has standing waves and they're called seiche, S-E-I-C-H-E. And just the way that there's movement in the loch, like it oscillates like is it 30 minutes or 30 hours? I didn't write it down, but frequently with a certain frequency, it'll oscillate and it creates these standing waves. And so between that and let's say some sort of optical effect or a mirage, that could create the impression of a creature.
Yeah, and you can actually look up pictures of this phenomena, standing waves. I've seen them before, and they do look weird. And I suppose it's possible that this could account for some of the sightings because they definitely look unusual. But I don't think they could account for the sightings where people see like a long neck and head sticking up out of the water.
Or crossing the road.
But they could account for some of the more serpent-like accounts, I suppose. Even like the humps coming out of the water kind of a thing, because they do look weird. They are very strange looking.
And in the same way, you could also have seismic gas caused by a small earthquake combined with some sort of optical effect to create the illusion of the Loch Ness Monster.
Now, I don't know if I'm on board with that one as much. So
seismic gas to me is kind of like swamp gas. It must just be gas.
I got some seismic gas for you.
I bet you do.
and that's why we record this podcast remotely, because of the seismic. No, but yeah, I've never seen seismic gas, but I can't imagine how that could cause a sighting like this.
It could just cause bubbles in the water, and that's about it, I would think.
Well, if you live with my brother, you would know what that looks like.
Damn. So many innuendos.
Yeah, like, I don't even know where to start.
Or just go for a swim with Agent ETA and you'll know exactly what that is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I live with Trail, like whether I'm underwater or not,
But
Trail bubbles.
It's hard to imagine. It's hard to reconcile some kind of gas with what the witnesses actually described. It's kind of like, like Venus or something like that, like it just doesn't, it doesn't line up with the witness descriptions of what they saw. For me, it would be easier to just say that the witnesses are just making everything up than to say, I don't know. But again, I'm not familiar with seismic gas. So who knows? Anything's possible, I guess.
Yeah. And I just want to say you too can watch the loch live on a webcam. You go to lochness.co.uk/livecam, and you can witness firsthand sheep grazing in a field with the loch in the background.
And each seismic gas? What?
Yeah.
Maybe you'll see Nessie, though.
So what else you got for us for possible explanations, Agent Ethan?
No, that was it. That's why I mentioned the webcam, so that you can look for yourself.
Okay, I thought you had like some interdimensional beings.
Oh, I did. Did you want me to mention those? Okay.
Yeah, come on. You got to do that. Come on.
So some people say that the reason there's no DNA is that Nessie is an extraterrestrial. So we wouldn't have any ET DNA here on Earth to compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
Also that it's a magical creature. So of course it has no DNA. I mean, duh. And
finally, probably exists on like the fifth plane of dimension.
Exactly. Something like that. And that kind of ties into the last one, which is that there's a wormhole that Nessie travels through back and forth between another dimension. So there's very little DNA to analyze that's actually in the lake.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's, she's only just scratching the surface. There's a ton of proposed solutions to this. Like, for example, logs that have been misidentified.
Right.
I think we touched on
Dude. Hey, trust you me. I have experience with that. You know what I mean?
I should have said. I take it back.
Hey, I come from a long line of log cutters, okay?
So it's a genetic anomaly then.
Yeah. But could be.
So I think we touched on the giant eel hypothesis, which is that any species could have outlying examples of, like if you just think of, for example, Shaquille O'Neal standing next to Mini-Me, maybe there's an unusually large eel out there that could be mistaken for Nessie.
Or a log.
Yeah, or a log.
I mean, just imagine that, I'm just saying, the potential they're involved with an individual like Shaq. I'm just saying, dude, like say if he say just for instance, just like, just humor me, right? You're in the forest, right? You're on a camping trip and you found this like pristine little area. It has a little stream right there with a little like pond, that pools up and like it's perfect for like just taking a dip in. It's like crystal clear water, right? But unbeknownst to you, Shaquille O'Neal happens to be upstream. He's camping also. And then he also, happens to have, a moment where he just got to take a, drop a log in the water, And for him, from his perspective, it may not be like a giant literal log, but from your perspective as your average individual, like that's going to be a log. It might fucking make a wake, in front of it. You know what I mean? Like it might be big enough to where like you might hear it coming downstream before you even see it. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. But like if you happen to experience something like that, yeah, no, that might be something else right there. I don't know. I'm just saying is all, like I digress.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry for that distraction.
What was that? So
my imagination took hold.
There's lots of other possible explanations, like sturgeons. Even though they didn't find sturgeon DNA, it could have been, a rogue sturgeon. And if you've never seen a picture of a sturgeon, they are weird. They do look like monsters. They can get very large. They're weird as hell. They look really weird.
Yeah.
Like maybe a long, I'm reading a list from online here. some of these, a long neck seal. I didn't know that was a thing, but okay.
Well, I heard this one nickname for him was long nose fuck you face.
Oh, that's my brother.
Yeah.
All right. It goes. Asian ether is never mind.
What just happened?
She's silently protesting the direction the show is taken.
I'm writing things on a notepad and drawing emoticons.
Sad faces.
Hey, you know what? I'm sorry, but I'm not going to apologize for being such a degenerate.
I don't think I'm going to edit that out because I thought it was funny. But all right. But anyways, there's a ton of different proposed solutions or hypotheses to what Nessie could be, but we'll leave it at that, I suppose. And I guess the last one I'll say is a UFO, but we'll leave it. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. So UFO and or interdimensional being.
Yeah. Is it anybody who wants to know more or look up more about the Loch Ness Monster? There's a couple of really good websites, but I think the first place that I would direct you to would be lochnessmystery.blogspot.com.
Mm-hmm.
It's a current blog they've been going for years and years. There's just a ton of resources on here, lots and lots of articles, lots of links to other websites, pictures. They have a fact. They got links to books. There's, just on and on and on. It's just tons and tons of information on this website. So check it out if you want to know more. lochnessmystery.blogspot.com. I mean, this website's so good that I kind of want to contact the guy who runs it to see if he can come on the show. Like, it's just really good. But
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be really fun to have him on the show. But yeah, so check that out if you want to dive in. There's so much we could probably do. I know I say this for some topics, but it's really true. We could probably do like 10 episodes minimum on just the Loch Ness Monster, just on the information this guy has on his website. I mean, I looked at a couple of other websites, but this one is probably the best place to start. I mean, especially because he has links to other websites. And then another one that I found that was pretty good that had a lot of good information on it it's nessie.co.uk is also this one's outdated, but it's also a really good resource that's worth checking out that I would suggest anybody who wants to find out more. So I guess in conclusion, let's go ahead and wrap this one up, I suppose. I guess it'd be easy to dismiss the Loch Ness Monster as, bullshit or whatever because of all the hoaxes throughout the years or just whatever. But if you want to take a good look at all the evidence throughout the years, the pictures, the videos, the eyewitness accounts or whatever, for me personally, it's hard to say that there's nothing to it. I think there really is something strange going on here, whether it's, a plesiosaur or, a group of plesiosaurs that have been hiding all these years or some kind of animal or, freshwater fish that's larger that we don't know about that is still undiscovered, which, I mean, this happens from time to time. We do discover new species. I think it's entirely possible that there's something there. I think it's possible.
People are witnessing something.
Yeah, they're saying something.
There's I don't know.
Maybe they're misidentifying logs or gas or something, but it's hard for me to say that it's all completely made up. I think that there really is something causing all these sightings. And I think it's very possible that it's some sort of anomalous creature out there. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I would like to believe that it's a long lost prehistoric monster, but I don't know. I've always had a hard time putting real belief behind it. But I do have the feeling that, maybe our ancestors may have caught a glimpse at something that was gigantic and they inspired them to tell the lore and folk tales of sea monsters and all that. Yeah. And the Loch is just one of those. But, who am I to say? I wasn't born back in that time. So until we find actual concrete proof, I'm still my water is still murky.
Well, I have exciting news along those lines. They're doing an expedition. Now, it's not specific to the Loch Ness Monster, but it is this year. There's a new robot sub being tested because they want to send it up to Antarctica to do underwater ice exploration, like really deep. And they want to deploy it for like 3 months at a time. So they're testing it in the Loch Ness. It can go down to 6,000 meters. And they're little yellow subs, and they're named, this is kind of funny, Bodie McBoatface is what the name's yellow sub.
Nice. I love it. I love it.
And
let me just get this straight. Bodie McBoatface. Yeah. That's what you said, right?
That's what
I love it. I absolutely love it.
How would that make your day? That would make my decade if Bodie McBoatface made the biggest scientific discovery. How awesome would that be, you know?
Oh, that would be the best thing ever.
Yeah, that would be great. It would be in history books.
Oh, man.
So that's recent. The news article I found was May of 2021. So that's going to be going on now. And it'll be interesting to see if they discover anything new since they're going to such a great depth.
All right. Well, I guess that about wraps it up for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys next week.